Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the Young Money South Africa launch. My name is Andrew de Block, one of the founding team of this new and exciting initiative to empower young South Africans to make good financial choices. So thank you for joining us today. It really does mean a lot to have you with us in the audience. So today is our official launch. It's the first day that this is technically in existence. We're so excited. Just to explain quickly before we get on to our guest presenter, of course, which is probably why most people are here, but Young Money is a project that came out of the realization and the recognition that just over half of young South Africans 18 to 35 years old are not financially literate. So just think about that for a second. More than half of young South Africans don't know enough about their own personal finances to make good decisions. Now, in a country like South Africa, where unemployment, wealth inequality, general stagnation of economic growth, all major factors playing into the socioeconomic circumstances we all find ourselves in, just think about how those personal decisions that this new generation, this up-and-coming generation are making, are having. So that's really where Young Money South Africa comes from, of course, drawing on the popular Young Money band, but putting this into a proudly South African context. So it's a not-for-profit operation. We're not yet registered as an NPO officially, but we're in the process for that. So holding thumbs, that happens soon. And just very importantly, as I'm sure Lisa will mention later, this is a source of information, not advice. So our website, which you must please go visit, www.young-money.co.za, is there to supply information and to relieve the information bottleneck that young South Africans have. You know, one of the main reasons that we have such poor financial literacy is that people don't have accessible information. Information is coded in all of this jargon, this finance bro language. So we're trying our best to make this as clear, as transparent, as accessible, as user-friendly as possible. So that's who we are and what we're hoping to do. So I've mentioned that, you know, this is coming out of this really dire situation, and our role in this is to supply that information, put it into ways that people can digest, that are helpful for people, that speak to real issues that young South Africans are faced with. So please do go visit our blog section in particular. We're building our resources section as well on the website. We're hoping to do many webinars like this to try and alleviate that problem of financial illiteracy. So our dream as a long-term vision for this project is that young South Africans are empowered to make good financial choices for themselves and their families and their dependents, that South Africa's enormous economic potential is realized. We recognize that our role to play in that is small but not insignificant, and that the barriers to financial freedom are broken down. Now, that is quite a powerful statement. Financial freedom is something that very few people attain and achieve, but that is our long-term dream for where we want South Africa to be. So how are we going to play our role in this? So we have our free open access web portal, www.young-money.co.za. Please do go have a look, give us comments, make guest contributions if you're a person with the knowledge to do so. Help us grow this community of young South Africans who want to help alleviate this problem of financial illiteracy in our generation. We don't want any jargon, fancy maths, no other barriers, making this as easy as possible. So we have our social media set up. Please do go to Young Money on Facebook, on Instagram, and now on YouTube as well. You're watching us here. Give us a subscribe. We'll be posting videos here as we have our virtual webinars. Hopefully in time we'll have newsletters, maybe even courses, but that is something we'll probably look to partner with someone like Lisa, who's going to present just now, who do an excellent job of this and have the right knowledge and qualifications to guide us. So let's get going on this path towards financial freedom. So thank you firstly to the team that put this together. This is something that I've led, but I've certainly not done in isolation. I'd like to thank James Hutchinson-Shear, the brand consultant, for putting together our incredible website. Lauren de Block, who's been running our social media, Susie James helping with our communications, and lastly, but certainly not least, Lisa, who's helping us kick this all off. We have our guest speaker with us. Lisa is a certified financial planner. She's the founder and CEO of Southern Pride Wealth. She's written articles, she's published blogs, she has courses, she has a podcast, She's particularly passionate about helping people, young people and women in particular, who's so needed in South Africa. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the work that you do alongside our objectives to make South Africa a much more financial literate and financially free place. We really do appreciate it, and we're so excited to hear from you on the 10 mistakes that young people make with money. Thank you for joining.
Thanks very much, Andrew. I greatly appreciate you bringing me in to help you launch this. It is a fantastic privilege, and we are so lucky to be in such a vibrant, growing country with such amazing human beings. So I'm going to share a presentation that I hope will change the way you think about money. So with no further ado, let's start and go down this road of how we create the power to choose. Because after all, that's all money gives us, the power to choose the life we want to live, where we spend our time, who we spend it with, if we decide to work or not, to do things that fulfill us. That power to choose is the greatest gift that anyone can ever have. So I want us to think about our money in this term that young people like to think of, which is called FIRE, financially independent, retire early. It seems to be the goal or aspiration that sweeps the world, that we should all be able to be financially independent and retire early. Now, as Andrew said, very few people ever reach financial freedom. National Treasury says that around 94% of the population will never be able to live at even the same level as they did when they worked. That means that's not an additional thing of travel, see the world, all of that kind of stuff. Only 6% of us will ever be able to continue to live at the same level as when we're working. So it does create a challenge as to how do we make sure that we are part of that 6%. And so I'm going to help you take a look at some of the mistakes that I see in the work that I do. So as Andrew mentioned, I run a wealth management business. I'm a CFP. And so every day I manage people's money. And what's important is that I manage the money of people, from young people, the kids of my clients, all the way through to people who have made the mistakes and are retired or have done it successfully. In addition, I have a podcast that over the 250 episodes that we've been doing covers many different ways of and thoughts around managing money that people feed back to me regularly. And so I'm continuously in this debate and almost quest to learn the best way for all of us to manage our money. So I'm going to look at 4 mistakes that people make in the way they spend their money, 4 mistakes young people make in the way they save their money, and 2 mistakes that people make in the way they manage their money. And so the first one that I'm going to start off with is a mistake that many people make every single day when they just say, it's just 200 Rand. We're going out with our mates, let's buy the bottle of champagne, it's just 200 Rand. We are tired, exhausted from a hard day of work. Let's stop and get some takeaway. It's just 200 Rand. I'm kind of sitting there thinking that maybe I'm just going to have sushi for lunch instead of going and getting something from the local store. It's just 200 Rand. And so one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making is this notion of it's just 200 Rand. So I wanted to give you and start off with some crazy numbers. If you invest 200 Rand every single month from the age of 20 to 65, you will have 3.2 million Rand. Now, if you just add 5 more years, you start at 15, and I teach money to kids in school. And so I'm really trying to get them to just start at 15. And you save that for the 50 years from 15 to 65, you then will have 5.7 million with only 5 years of extra saving of 200 Rand a month. That's not much money. But if you save 300 Rand for those 45 years, you will have 4.9 million. And if you do it for just 5 years extra, you will have 8.6 million Rand. So for 50 years of just 300 Rand per month, not increasing with inflation, nothing, just 300 Rand a month, you could have 8.6 million rand. So here's the thing that I want to kind of put to you in as gentle as possible way. Easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life. Now, this isn't a great saying that I came up with. In fact, it's quite a well-known saying. And if you think about it in terms of the wealth world, and I'll often say that the health and wealth world has a pretty similar long-term mindset challenges as the wealth world. The health world and the wealth world, pretty similar. So if I say to you, if you do exercise 5 times a week, it's going to help you to live a long and healthy life with far lower medical bills. It is an easy choice to say, oh, it's too early in the morning, I'm not going to go for that walk. But what will happen is that you will have a hard life when you're older. You will be far less able to deal with the health challenges of old age. Hard choices, easy life. So if you know that you make that decision every single morning to get up and go for the run, you know that you're going to end up with a much easier life. And we can all relate to this in the health world. We know that if we eat healthy, we're going to be in better shape for our future. And if we stay fit, we'll be in better shape for our future. But this is this exact same choice every single day that every one of us faces. Are we going to make the hard choice not to buy that extra convenience food? Are we going to make the hard choice not to order the extra dessert and therefore have a better long-term future? Or are we going to make those easy choices and say, hey, you know, whatever, I'll just get that little takeaway? So you've got to choose. And the thing that you've got to choose is to shift your mindset from small investments don't matter to understanding clearly that consistency over time, and you need the time for this one, will make an enormous difference into the life you lead. So let's look at another mistake that I see people making. And that is one that says, I can spend now and pay later. And people don't actually say it. What it expresses itself in is that everybody has a car loan. And not only do they have a car loan, they take their cell phone on contract and they pay it over 2 years. And they also have a big Christmas holiday on their credit card and pay it back January, February, March, April. And it effectively reveals a mindset or a belief that I can spend now and pay later. So what does that mean? Well, let's take a car. If we took that last calculation that we did, that you drive a car from the age of 20 and you buy a car at 20 and the last car you'll buy is at 70 years old, so that 50-year-old period, if you buy a car all the time and you're always paying finance for a car over that 50-year period and you just saved a little more and put a bigger deposit on and you saved yourself that extra 300 Rand per month over that 50-year period, you would have 8.6 million. And trust me, if you do the numbers over the entire year of a car every 5 years and even a car every 10 years, and you pay no finance towards it, you're going to have a hang of a lot more. And so I see this all the time, is this view that little bits of money and some things aren't really debt. I mean, I'm not really in debt. I've just got a car loan and I don't have any debt, but I have a cell phone on contract. So I want to look a bit at this concept of debt, because there's an analogy I always use, which is debt pays the bankers the money for them to sit on the beach. You have to choose whether you want the bankers to sit on the beach or whether you want yourself to sit on the beach. Now, I always say to all the people I teach, like, go for it. You know, my husband and I had a life in banking, a career in financial services. And so because we had this amazing career in financial services and God blessed us with great money and we managed that money well, we got to be financially independent and early. I started work at 42 when we had enough money for our retirement, but the problem was we had 3 tiny little children. So John stopped work at 48. And so we made the choice to never put ourselves in a position where we were paying for others to sit on the beach. We chose to sit on the beach. So let's take that cell phone. let's call it a 10,000 Rand cell phone. So it's in the middle of the range between the 2,000 and the 20,000 Rand cell phone, 20% per year. Currently, that's quite cheap in South Africa from a short-term debt perspective. You're going to pay 508 Rand a month. That 508 Rand that you pay a month means that you're going to pay 12,214 Rand for a 10,000 Rand phone, which is 1,107 Rand per year. Now, putting that into our little calculator and knowing that people get a cell phone at least at 15, and they're not going to actually stop at 65. So let's say they stop at 75 in terms of getting a new cell phone every 2 years that they buy on contract. They are going to have cost themselves, if you had just paid for that, saved up and paid for that cell phone in cash, over those 60 years, just that 1,107 Rand, and if you invested it, you could have 99 million Rand. I kid you not, I checked the numbers many times. And this is this power of small amounts over a long period of time, of changing our mindset to be able to say, I'll just take it on credit, and changing our ways to save so that we save first, and choosing that instead of buying now and paying later, we decide to save now and buy later. So that's the second thing. Now, the third thing, and something that I hear quite a bit, is the house I live in is an asset. So when I ask people for their assets and liabilities or the investments that they have, they will put their house as an asset. Now, whilst from an accounting standards perspective, that's absolutely correct. In actual fact, when we look at investing, we don't consider the house you live in as an asset because you will always need a house to live in. An asset in investing terms is an investment that generates income. And whilst this house that you live in is beautiful, it might be worth a lot of money and all those other good things, it does not generate income. In fact, not only does it not generate income, it burns income. And the bigger the house, the more expensive it is, because the bigger the house, the more rates and taxes. The bigger the house, the more geysers you have, because you now have more bathrooms, you have a bigger garden, it needs more water, you need the gardener to come more times a week. It just chews more money. Now, I know that, and I know that personally, because John and I lived in an 850 square meter house on a 2,500 square meter property in the middle of Melrose in Johannesburg. We had a beautiful big house, wonderful home, huge big oak tree, all wonderful and perfect. And then we decided to move to Hilton, where right now, the cost of our house, the whole cost of our entire house, helpers, everything that's associated with the house, is 15% of the house we lived in Joburg. And so we gave ourselves the ability to choose. With that much more money, we could have done two things, either invested more or decide that John could stop working. So you have to be able to choose and decide that you're not going to upsize. And all of us, we see it everywhere. We buy a little flat in our 20s and we upsize that into like a little medium-sized house when we get married. And then when the kids get bigger and they need more space, we upsize it into a much bigger house. Each time putting more and more and more money into this non-income generating asset and spending more and more and more money on rates and taxes and water and lights and electricity and all these other things that one needs. And that really is a massive challenge. So when I advise young people about what to do about housing, I always say to them, if the kids are getting bigger, go and rent for 6 or 7 years. My twins are 12 years old and they hardly ever play in the garden. They are busy at school playing 2-3 sports, doing stuff all the time. And when they come home, they just want to chill out. And so we've gone through the phase of having a big garden where we needed space for them to play soccer and all those other things. And now we're in a phase where in actual fact, we don't need a big garden. And so I say to people, just rent, go out, rent, and then come back, because the buying and selling costs of big houses and the operations of big houses mean that we shouldn't fall into this trap of upsizing every time we want a different place. But also there is a huge opportunity, and in actual fact, truly by God's grace, and not because John and I were any wiser than anybody else at that time of our lives, we then got to a stage where when we were young, we bought, just before we came back to South Africa, we bought a flat in London that we rented out. And we came back to South Africa at the age of 30 with absolutely no money whatsoever. And we started from scratch. The age of 30, when our friends were driving bigger cars and getting bigger houses because they were starting the families and all those kind of stuff, John and I came with enough money to put a tiny deposit on a Volkswagen Polo and a tiny deposit on a house. And we left all of our money and all of that investment in the flat in London, and it's been growing for the last 20 years. Now, I was only able in my 20s to put the required money for my pension that I needed to do with work and buy this flat in our 20s. And so what happened by doing that, by not continuously upsizing, by not selling that flat and taking the money to buy a nice big home in Johannesburg, what I ended up doing by coming back and fuss baiting with my tiny little car where everyone drove big cars, is that I turned my 20s into an investment, because that house has continued to compound. It's 4 times the value it was 20 years ago. And it's continued to grow, and the rental income comes in, and it then gets invested into shares, and this whole thing just keeps growing. Had I taken the house and done what everybody else does and put that money into a bigger house, I would have had a much easier life. I would have driven a bigger car. Those first 3 years coming back with absolutely nothing were mind-blowing, but I reaped the rewards. And as I said, it wasn't because we were any great things. We were just scared of having to bring all of our money back to South Africa. And so this is the thing where it says, comes to each one of us where we have to choose. And what we need to choose is, do we want to make those hard choices and start as a newlywed couple with absolutely nothing, and leave that money just to invest and grow? Or do we want an easier life, but over time, it's going to make it harder? So big home, you will have small freedom. Small home, you're going to have big choices through your life. And that brings me to something that I hear a lot, which is, I deserve this. I can have everything I want, and I can have it now. And by having these things, the bigger car, the nicer cell phone, the bigger house for John and I when we first got married, all of those things, I will be happy. So I hear this and I go, okay. There's one major problem with this, and that really major problem comes into the fact that money is finite. Only one of you can have it, and only one of you can spend it. Your current you can spend it, so you can decide, hey, I'm going to buy the bigger car, and current me, today's me, will spend it and enjoy it. But future me won't have that money to spend and enjoy. And that's the problem. Because it's finite, you can only use it once. And because you can only use that money once, you've got to choose, am I going to put it now towards investments that will grow, that 200 Rand or 300 Rand to become the 8.6 million? Or am I going to enjoy that 300 Rand of sushi and feel better about life now, but more difficult about life later? So here's Porsche Cayenne. Trust me, if I could, I would buy the baby. It is a beautiful, amazing car, and it looks like a cockpit when you sit inside. But on average, that Porsche Cayenne can cost us, let's say, around 2.5 million Rand, which means that over a 5-year period at a car interest rate, you're going to pay about 820,000 Rand a year towards that car. Now, here's the thing. For that car of 2.5 million, you're going to pay an extra 1.7 million Rand in interest. Now, that, if you were to take it per year, would be 335,000 Rand a year in interest. Now, that's fine, and each person has what they think is worth it. But for me, my worth it is holidays with my family. We've always driven small cars. We would go to these amazing schools that our kids are blessed to be able to go to. And I would always have this car. In Johannesburg, drove a Honda Jazz, tiny little car, all 3 kids in, and the hockey sticks and the netball and swimming and whatever else had to come in, and off we'd go. In my view, paying for cars is not worth it. So I will save up for a car and buy it cash. And we have never voluntarily kind of changed our cars. They are either redistributed or alternatively, farm vehicle, because I now live in the Midlands in farmland, lost its axle and took out the car. So for me, cars are not worth it, but family and family time is. And when we decided to move to the Midlands, we saw a beautiful big house, and we saw this little house that we have with this beautiful view. And we said to the girls, now, which one do you guys want? And they were absolutely unanimous. The big, beautiful house on the lake, on a golf course, amazing, amazing, amazing. And we said, that's cool. But here's the thing. If we have that house, we can have it, but we're not going to go on very nice holidays. Alternatively, we can buy the little house and we can go on better holidays every year. And that for us is worth it. So here's the secret that you need to know. You can have anything you want. You just cannot have everything. You have got to decide what's worth it. You have got to decide whether you want to make those hard choices now, and so that you can have an easy life later. And I changed from having Apple phones to having Samsung phones. Why? Because I could buy a phone that cost 3,000 Rand. I wasn't forced to buy these very expensive phones. Did it kill me? Absolutely. I love my Apple phone. But once I'd got over the month of transition, I then was able to spend so much less because it's just not worth it to me. It's not worth it. So you have to choose, and you have to decide whether you're going to live a life that says, I deserve everything now. I work hard. I am absolutely exhausted. I deserve not to have to cook supper and just to buy that sushi. But in actual fact, what you're also saying is I deserve nothing when I'm retired. Or I can choose to believe that I can have anything I want. I want those holidays away with my family, but it means that I have to trade back on other things. I have to choose what's worth it. And what's worth it for me is not worth it for you. I have a client who hates holidays. Her best thing in the world is to have her 2 weeks off at home with her cats. So that's not worth it. I've got another client who loves amazing cars. He doesn't need overseas trips, loves South Africa, and all he wants is beautiful cars. For each one of us, it's completely different. There's no right or wrong. It's just that you can't have everything. So that brings me to another principle that I want to talk about, which is that I earn too little to save. So the people I love teaching the most are home helpers. And I want to tell you a story about them. But the first thing I want to show you is some science behind what I'm going to tell you. Morningstar, which is a massive investment research platform, all these other things in our industry, did a piece of work which tried to answer the question of, if people have a strong vision for their life, if they have a vision for their life that is 10 years or more out, does that change how much money they earn now? So, and is it only people that have lots of money are able to save, or does this change people throughout the spectrum? And the results show that from $25,000 a year, a low salary, all the way to 150,000 plus a year, it didn't matter how much you earned. The minimum amount that you would have more was 3 times more assets than the person who earned the exact same amount as you, but had a vision that was less than 10 years out. So the flip side of this is to be able to say that if you have a strong and detailed vision of your life for 10 years or more, you are more likely to put money away and invest it than those who just are trying to live year to year, month to month. The biggest kind of bell curve is around the 3 to 5 year version. Now, for all of us, we can say, well, what is going to happen in 10 years' time? Well, my one daughter's 16. Over the next 10 years, I'm going to need to have paid for her to go to university and probably to buy a car or something else that helps to make her be able to work and become productive so she gets off my payroll. I'm also have 20s that are 12. In 10 years' time, they're going to be midway through university. So I can deeply imagine what the financial impact on my life is going to be of having to pay for all of this at the same time when they're older. So here's the number. You need 3 million Rand invested for 10,000 Rand of expenses when you retire. So if you want to stop work at the age of 40 and you need 20,000 Rand a month before tax, you are going to need 6 million Rand. If you want 30,000 Rand a month, you're going to need 9 million Rand. And so it goes. Now, as we know, inflation hits all of us. And the basket of goods that you buy today worth the 10,000 Rand that you're going to live off at a 6% inflation, in 12 years' time, that basket of goods that cost you 10,000 Rand is now going to cost you 20,000 Rand. So if you say to yourself, listen, I want to retire in 12 years' time, and I need 10,000 Rand a month today, it means that you're going to have invested so that 10,000 Rand that you need today will be 20,000 Rand in 12 years' time. And so that 3 million then becomes 6 million. So that's a number that you need. And none of us can save that number because theoretically, we're going to work from the age of 20 to 60, and we're going to live from 60 to 100. So 40 years of working, 40 years of not working, theoretically, you need to save half your salary now for half later. Now, none of us can do it. And as I said to you right at the beginning, the only way you can do that is if you invest it and you have time. So you have to choose. Are you going to live with this view that says, I earn too little? Or are you going to do the work with your partner, wife, spouse, whomever, to be able to say, we can change our money if we have a clear vision of our future 10 years or more? We can, in general, we can have 3 times more money if we just have one thing, which is a clear vision. It costs you no money. And it makes sense, really, because effectively what it says is if I'm sitting there thinking, in 10 years' time, I'm going to have to pay for the 20s to be at varsity, not only the bills, but also all the things that come around it, I need to put more money aside now to be able to manage that in 10 years' time. So that's what happened, is because people are continuously thinking more than 10 years out, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice because they can deeply imagine what it's going to feel like visiting their kids at varsity who are happy. So then it brings us to another one of our little things that I want to chat about, which is when people say, if I just earned a little more money. Now, these helpers that I mentioned, they always say to me, if I earn 4,000 Rand, if I just earned 5,000 Rand, my life would be better. And then when I go and speak to people who earn 10,000 Rand, they tell me that if they just earned 11,000 Rand, they'd be able to save. And then I speak to people who earn 20,000 Rand, and they say if they just earned 22,000 Rand, they would be able to save. And then I sit there and I speak to people who earn 50,000 Rand, they say, if I just earned 55,000 Rand, life would be better. And when I speak to a person who earns 100,000 Rand, they'll just say, if I just earned like 110, I'd be fine. And I would like to tell you now that there's a law for this. It's called Parkinson's law. We will expand to fit the space that we have. So if I say to you, I need you to do that project by 3 months' time, you'll do the project in 3 months' time. And if I give you 2 months to do the project, you'll have it done in 2 months. And if I say to you, I need that project in 2 weeks' time, you will have it done in 2 weeks' time. This is the thing. It doesn't matter how much money you have, you will always want more. None of us can live on our varsity allowance from our parents. We keep expanding to fill the space that we have in our bank account. And it goes to say that if we don't have space in our bank account, we will stop expanding, but we will expand if there's space available. So that brings me to this thing when people say, there is no space to save now. I cannot find a space in my bank account, in my budget, to be able to save now, which I will introduce you to a technique called Save for Tomorrow. Now, in the world I work, there is a phenomenal field called behavioral finance. And behavioral finance basically looked at the economists and all these important people, and they said, human beings do not act like a spreadsheet. We all know what we're supposed to do. We just don't do it. It's like saying we all know that we shouldn't eat sugar and we should exercise, but most of the population doesn't. So this is how it works, is that taking behavioral finance into consideration, there is a law called loss aversion. And what it basically says is none of us want to lose what we already have. So nobody's going to give me extra money to invest. But here's what you do. When you get your 6% or inflationary increase in your next pay rise, if you just take half of it, and on the day that money comes into being, you save 3%, half of that money. And then when you get the next year, when you get your next 6% increase, you invest that half of that money and take that half of the money in and continue to invest and just increase your debit order of investing by that little half of your salary increase every single year. What happens over time is all of a sudden you're getting to 15%, 18%, 20% that you're saving. So if I say to you today, can you give me 20% of your salary to invest, which is what we all should be doing, and you go, never lease. If we start from your very next salary increase and we keep putting that money away, you will find that before you know it, you'll be there and able to invest a huge amount of money. The problem comes is if you don't start now, and I come to you in 5 years' time, I promise you, you would have continued to put it off and put it off and put it off. You have to be disciplined that as that increase comes in that very first month, you then take the money and take it away. And what that does is achieve the two things. You both are getting to grow the amount you invest every single month, every single year, but also you are closing that pot, that Parkinson's law. You're reducing the amount of money that you need in order to retire, because that money that you would have spent, and trust me, you would have spent, every human being spends the money that's in their accounts. That money that you would have spent, you've worked out how not to have it because you've never had it. You just didn't ever have it in your account because you put it on direct debit. So you've got to choose. Do you want to save for tomorrow? Or do you want to say, listen, well, I can't save now. There's been so many increases. I'll save later. I'll save when the kids are finished fasting. Now, here's the problem. We didn't have children at 20 years old. We are all having children later and later and later and later, which means at the time the kids leave university, you're 55. You don't have enough time for that money to grow and grow and grow. So we need to make a plan. And this thing of saving for tomorrow is the least painful way that you possibly can. So the next thing that when people start a sentence, when we have an investment meeting or anything, and they say, my friend at the Bri said, honestly, I want to pick myself up and run away and just go, no. The worst thing you can ever say to a financial advisor is that my friend at the Bri said. And the reason why is that your friend might be an absolutely phenomenal human being, but your personal circumstances might be different. They might have half of their retirement money already in place, and so can afford to lose if this thing doesn't go wrong. You might have none. They might have no children. You might have. You both might have children, but they don't have to support one of your parents in old age. You both have completely different attitudes to risk. If they lose some money, hey, they'll make it up. You might be very fearful of losing money. And then when it comes to a vision of life, even if all of those things are exactly the same, their wife wants to retire in New York and your wife wants to retire in Paternoster and paint all day. So each one of us are completely unique in what we do. And trust me, the wealthier you are, the more risks you can afford to take. But that often is not the case for you personally. You have your own unique needs, and therefore you need your own unique investment strategy. But here's a little graph that'll blow your socks. It's by a company called Delbar. And for the last 30 years, they have been researching trying to quantify what is the gap between a human being and the S&P 500 in terms of the performance. And what they're trying to evaluate is, does our behavior as human beings impact the way our investments, how much money we have when we retire? So effectively, this shows if you invested $100,000 30 years ago, how much would you have now? Well, if you just put it in the S&P 500 and you left it for all 30 years, you would have $2 million. But the average investor only has 790,000. They have 2/3 less money than the index did. And the question is why? Why does most of us have less money than the S&P 500? And it comes down to behavior. You see, we as human beings have these instincts inside us that are different from person to person, but effectively that destroy the value of our money. We are fearful. So what happens when COVID hits, and I happen to be on a investment committee meeting for 3 days, right as COVID hit and the markets plummeted. And between the 15 of us financial advisors, there were a number of clients we have a number of clients between us, but there were many clients who wanted to pull their money out. As the market tanked, the fear grips and they remove their money when the money has dropped significantly. And the problem with removing the money is that it doesn't have the chance to recover. And what we saw in COVID was within a month, it had recovered. The next thing is timing the market. What happens is that they come out the market because they think the market's going to crash. And then they decide a time when they want to go back in the market, or they don't invest because they think it's going to get better. I mean, I know this personally in terms of the fact that I was going to buy air tickets for overseas 3 weeks ago, and I decided that I thought that, the price of petrol would get better and everything would else get better and would be cheaper. And they're now 12,000 Rand more expensive. So we all are trying to time the best time to get the best deal. But trying to time the market, you have to be right more than 80% of the time in order to be able to do that. And not even the best investment advisors are. So that is a challenge. Short-termism is when you're in overseas offshore and your mate is in South Africa invested, and you get at the Brian, your mate says, oh my goodness, my stuff has grown amazingly, and you go, oh my heck, mine's gone backwards, I'm going to sell that at a loss, take it to South Africa, and you happen to take it at the end of its run and so end up losing more. You have to think for the long term. We all know FOMO. It's what drives the stuff in the braai. And lastly, putting your hands in the cookie jar. And that's when you end up having to raid your investments, either because you want to go on holiday, you want to extend your house, or alternatively, you've got to pay for the new car because you had a car crash. Putting your hands in the cookie jar and having to take money out at a time that might not be the best time in the growth cycle, that behavior destroys 2/3 of the money that you can have. So you've got to choose. Do you want to take the advice of the world out there? People who might have made a lot of money, might be very good with their investment decisions, but aren't you? Do you want to take that advice, or do you want to build and hopefully partner with someone whose job it is to manage money, but do you want to build and stick to a consistent, regular investing strategy that works for you, not for your mate, not for their personal circumstances, but for you and your circumstances? The other thing that I hear a lot is around unexpected expenses that derail me. So this one starts when a person says, we were doing quite fine actually as a family. We were great. We were in shape. Everything was good. And trust me, unexpected expenses or emergencies seem to come in threes. So we had a car crash, the geyser burst, and my child fell out of a tree and needed 3 operations, which cost us a lot of money. And that story is far too frequent. And people say to me, here's the problem. I can't plan for unexpected expense. I didn't know the geyser was going to break. I didn't know that the child was going to fall out the tree. And I also definitely didn't know that the farm vehicle was going to lose its axle and slam into us, take out our car. But I'd like to guarantee you one thing. I want to guarantee you that in the next 3 years, you will have a financial emergency. You might not have any actually for 6 years, and then you might get 2 in 1 year. But every 3 years on average, you will have a financial emergency. I can't tell you what it's going to be, but I can guarantee you it will happen. And whether you are 19, 30, 60 or 70, you will have a financial emergency in the next 3 years. So can you prepare for it? Yes, because it's going to happen. And here's the thing about emergency funds. You need to apply 2 rules to an emergency fund. The first one is that you can only put your fingers into it if it's something that happened to you. Bad budgeting, you can't put your fingers into that. Something that happens to you, because what happens is you go, oh, I want a new bike. What I'll do is I'll just quickly dip into the emergency fund and I'll get the bike and then I'll pay it back. What happens is that you dip into the emergency fund, you get the bike, and 3 days later, you have a car crash. So the rule is you dip into the emergency fund only on something that happens to you. And then you immediately refill it. You save like mad, you canape, you make sure nobody spends anything until you can refill that emergency fund. Why? Because they happen in 2 and 3, and they just keep coming. So when things happen, you might have nothing for 5 or 6 years, and then 2 or 3 things are going to happen. So keep making sure that it's filled up. You have to choose. Do you want to just go, oh, I can't plan for emergencies, I'm not going to have an emergency fund? Or do you want to make sure that you have a minimum of 3 months of expenses saved up? Now, what I say to my clients is your first month of expenses is your immediate priority. But thereafter, it can take you 3 to 5 years to build up an emergency fund with putting money aside all the time to increase up to, say, 6 months if you're a family. And the problem is people go, oh, but it's not worth it. Trust me, it is absolutely worth it. And everybody in COVID who had emergency funds got through COVID. Those that didn't had to raid the cookie jar of their investments, pull out investments at the wrong time in order to survive the drastic emergency. Which brings me to the last mistake that I often see people have, which is, but I've always been bad at money, managing my money. Now, the first time I heard this was when I was working in corporate. I decided to teach a team of mine about money because they were young and they didn't have really great spending attributes. In fact, I have never, ever had a team of people work for me who don't drive, when I was in corporate, who don't drive better cars than I do. I used to rock up at these offsites, 10, 15 years older and a lot more wealthier than my newest or second newest employee. And they would all have a lot better cars. And so I said to them, do you want us to kind of get together and let me teach you a few things? And they did. And this wonderful human called Robin said to me, she looked me straight in the eye and she said, good luck in teaching me anything about maths. I sat there and I went, oh my goodness gracious me, money is about behavior. It's not about maths. Maths is like least, they always say 90% of your outcome depends on the behaviors you make and only 10% on whether you get the exact investment right. And so I kind of was confused by this. And she had a story in her mind that I've always been bad at money. I can't do maths, I can't do money. So in the book that I wrote, Deep Grooves, have a principle that says that I have a belief that anybody can be good at anything. You just need hard work, you need a good teacher, and you need time. Time to just keep doing this and keep doing this and keep practicing. Even I, who can't paint and have 10 left thumbs, could do a pretty decent painting after 2-3 years of going to art lessons once a week. Why? Because there are recipes for everything. Follow the recipe and you can become good at anything. For those of you that have a natural tendency, you're going to be great at managing your money. You might need good teaching. There's always a blind spot that someone doesn't have. The tax laws change every single year. But basically, if you spend time, you have a good teacher and a natural inclination towards it, you will be great at managing your money. And then there's the last one, which is which is when you serve other people, which is what I do. So I personally, like when I'm highly stressed, I will go and take the bank statements of my company and build my spreadsheets and populate my spreadsheets to track all the money and what's coming in and forecast it forward. That's my stress relief. And I use this gift God gave me to teach other people about how to do this. So, but I want you to know that anybody can be good at managing their money. And if you don't want to be good at managing your money, you can partner with anyone, a financial advisor, to help you to be good at managing your money. But if you do want to, and you choose to not give into that silly belief that you can't be good about managing money, you can absolutely become good. And I want to give you 4 ways that you can do it. The first one is you need to track your money. It is unbelievable how many times people will come to me for a financial plan, and I'll say, I need 12 months of your income and expenses. And they're like, look at me and go, I have no idea how much money I spend. And I go, no, that doesn't work. You need to track your money. Everybody needs to track their money. And the next thing is that you need to spend time. On average, there was a research that was done in America that said on average, people spend 12 minutes a month on their money. So effectively, they spend 2 hours a year on their money. Now, here's the thing. You are not going to be good. In fact, you're not even going to be average, and you're not even going to be at entry level on anything if you don't spend some time on it. You have to invest the time. And so in the old days, people could get away with saying, well, but they're useless. There's nobody teaches about money. No, there are tons of teaching throughout this entire presentation. My podcast, Working Women's Wealth, has all of these different episodes that are taught in human speak. And I'm one of millions of people who teach about money. These days, you can find someone to learn for free about money. That's what podcasts are. They're all free, So spend 1 hour a month to track your money and 1 hour a month to learn more about what you should be putting in place. And it's going to sound like Chinese in the beginning. And then over time, it becomes something that is, kind of you understand. My editor for my podcast is a musician, and she started at the beginning, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And now she's got it all under control 250 episodes later. So you need to automate your monthly investments. This is the secret. The more you have to think about it, the more you have to stress about it, the more you have to keep finding those blooming details and then decide each month whether you feel or not. The first money that goes off your salary should be that direct debit into your investments. And lastly, the kind of question that I want you to linger with were, if you were God's CFO, Chief Financial Officer, would you give you more money? And when I teach people and I ask them the question, their eyeballs go like this. Because if you're going to take money and waste it all the time and be in debt and pay for the bankers to sit on the beach and all these other things, it's never going to grow. You're never going to come into that abundant kind of space. You need to make sure that you reframe your money beliefs, that this is something that is worth it for you to invest your time on. Because when you invest your time in learning, in studying, when you choose to make that change and choose to be free, it's a good excuse to say I'm bad with money. It's just not true. Nobody is bad with money. It's just everyday behavior. I can tell you that I'm quite bad with chocolate, and I can tell you that I'm quite bad with ice cream. I love some ice cream, but I can also choose to be free, and I can also choose to be healthy. And that is the same with your wealth. Your wealth is exactly the same. You can choose to be free, and you can choose to be financially free by making just tiny little changes every single year to your money, and it'll take you a long way. So if you do want to learn more, you can. I have a website, lisalinfield.com, and I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. But there are also many amazing teachers of money out there and many great resources. And the resources that Andrew is building, those resources are going to be there for you to make sure that you can absolutely change the way you work with money. It is going to sound, and it might totally sound foreign to you right at the beginning, but know that over time you will get to learn how this thing works. You'll get more and more experience with it, and you will suddenly find yourself able to be financially free. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope that it's been worth the time and the effort that you have put in to be here today, and I really want to applaud you for that.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lisa. Incredibly inspirational, incredibly helpful. Exactly what we're trying to do at Young Money, just making these things easy for people to understand. not overcomplicating, simple speak, laying down the facts. Thank you so much. I can see that was a lot of effort to put together, and you've drawn on all your years of experience. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
So I think some of the things that stood out for me is just that wealth and financial security are so achievable for all of us. It just takes a bit of discipline and usually some compound interest.
Absolutely, definitely takes compound interest.
And I think, as young South Africans, one of the things that we have on our side is time. And when you're working with finances, time is so important. So everyone that's tuned in and that's following along, I think, use this opportunity. You've got this message now, and you're young enough that it can have a real, seriously substantial effect on your finances. Some of those graphs you showed us were, almost scary, in the difference between someone at this age and then 10 years. 10 years is all it is, and suddenly there's a huge chunk missing. Just time seems like such an important factor.
Absolutely.
So for those of us who were just making furious notes, this is being recorded, so we will post it on our YouTube channel. I know Lisa also wants to make use of it on her own platforms, and she has many. So we will make that available very soon, so watch out for that. You can all go back and find those specific podcast episode references. We've all done our 1 hour of learning for the month, but I would encourage you to go to a couple more hours listening to Lisa's podcast and scrolling through our blogs as well. We're trying to build up that section. So I hope that was all useful to all of you. I think it's been a cracking start to the Young Money project. We had a couple of questions in the chat box, so I'm just going to put some of those to you, Lisa, if you're fine with that.
Perfect.
The first one was someone said that they've got a savings account, and with banking fees and all that, it's just going down. They're not earning money on it, but they want to start investing, but they just don't know where and how. Like, where do you start?
So every single person's situation is different. So unfortunately, I don't know the viewer's personal circumstances, so I could never give advice as to where to start. But what I can say for absolute certainty is that you can't save your way to retirement, because the interest on your savings is usually on a long-term average, less than inflation. And when that happens from a long-term average perspective, you're going to have less money in 10 years' time than you have now. Add to that banking fees, and you're guaranteed to have less money in 10 years' time, or less purchasing power. Your money will grow, but you won't be able to buy the same basket of goods in 10 years' time. So it is why we all have to invest. And it's so important to make sure that you upskill yourself to know where you're best placed to invest in. But there are many things that, and it's a whole nother session, but I have the 6 P's of investing. And the first 3 things that you have to take into consideration is, what is the purpose of this? Is this money, can I invest it for the rest of until my retirement? Or is this money that I'm going to need in the next 5 years because it's a deposit on the house? Or is this money that I'm going to need in 2 or 3 years' time because I'm replacing my cell phone? So you have to think about purpose, and you have to think about period. How long is this thing going to be investing for? And then what you need to be able to think is protection. How much, where do I need to put this to protect myself from putting my hands in the cookie jar? Have I got my emergency fund set up? Because if I have a disaster and it's invested in the MSCI World Index overseas, I'm then going to have to bring that money back, and I keep bringing it back at a wrong time. So when you look at those 3 things in place to say, where does it actually fit into my unique strategy? You can very easily come up with quite easy ways to work out where you should invest.
Awesome. And obviously one of the best ways to work out, if you're just starting out and you feel like you're completely swamped by this, you don't know what exactly to do, and you're worried about making the wrong decision, is to ask someone like a financial advisor. So I wonder, can you just talk quickly about who needs a financial advisor and how to go about finding the right fit for you?
So your financial advisor, in my mind, needs to partner with you for your life. And any partner that you choose for life, be it a husband or be it a business partner or be it a friend, you might need to kiss a few frogs before you make choose someone whose philosophy is with you. I believe everybody needs a financial advisor. There's a lot of things, fees and this and that and all the other stuff. When you see that huge big difference between the behavior and the S&P 500, that's a percent worth of difference each year. When it compounds over time, it's huge. When people are not invested in the right thing, when they put their hands in the cookie jar, when you don't have someone to stop your own behavioral tendencies, fear, FOMO, short-termism, all that kind of stuff, you're going to destroy the value of your money. For me, I think it's completely worth it to find a great financial advisor to partner with on your journey, even if you know a lot about money. So I will often see people who manage their own money and they have done a phenomenal job about managing their own money, but it's not structured correctly for tax. And they get to retirement and they're in a really bad position because they're having to pay an enormous amount of tax on retirement funds, and there's no flexibility and there's nothing in their wife's name. So you have to manage all these things and put all these things together to be able to be financially independent. So the best Olympic athletes have a coach in their life. Why on earth wouldn't every human being have a financial coach or a financial advisor in their life? Because this is the most important, where you put your money and where you invest your money. This is whether you're going to have that big thing of the S&P 500 type return or 2/3 less because you're trying to do it by yourself.
That's exactly it. Another question from Lauren. For your emergency fund that you talked about, would you recommend that's in cash, obviously not in physical cash stashed under the mattress, or in an investment?
So it depends how much it is and how much you earn, and it depends on many things. But a general guideline or rule that I give to my clients is that the first month is in cash and the months 2 to 6 are in a income fund. So here's the thing. When you have an emergency, you need access to it. When the car crashes, you need to be able to get that money. When your child needs to pay for surgery or something to your parents, you need access to that money. So some of that money needs to be in a money market account that you can have immediate access to. The rest of that money, you will often have a bit of time. So I wouldn't put it in a 30 or 60-day notice account. You can actually invest it in an income fund, which gives you cash-like returns, but slightly higher over time. And some people actually just kind of split it up. But basically what I would say to you is, remember, it's for emergencies, and emergencies happen in the middle of the night. So you need access to it. You need to be able to get hold of it quickly. And secondly, you would like the others to get a little bit more growth, or at least maintain inflation, because you might have 6 years before your emergency hits. So you've got to think quite cleverly and quite clearly about it. But I'd rather you have it in a money market account earning more interest than have it nowhere at all because you just can't figure it out. So just do it, get on with it. This is a non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, thank you for answering that one. It's very important. There's been a couple of questions about apps, both with regard to financial management, so personal finance management, but also investing. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations there?
So there are many phenomenal and amazing apps. I mean, these days you can do anything on it. I generally tend to use and get my clients use 24/7 in the South African context, because from a money management perspective and being able to track your monthly expenses, because it learns where you're spending. And it also, in our house, we pull together John's expenses, the current account, the credit card, etc., mine, the shared ones, all of that kind of stuff into one place. And then it learns what my local spas, the description is. So that for me is the easiest way to track and manage your money. My husband and I are great spreadsheet people, so I still have never found an app that works for me. It gets downloaded from 24/7 and I pop it in my own spreadsheets. I've got a free spreadsheet on my website that both track and forecast. Don't believe in budgeting. I'm not a fan of budgeting. To have one number a month that you're supposed to stick to, because Christmas is always high and May is often low. So, you know, we never have a single consistent expense. I believe in forecasting. And so, you know, can I just have an Excel spreadsheet that you can download for free? But 22/7 is the app that I use to track money. When it comes to investing, there are many amazing, all the places have online things that you want to invest. But again, it depends what you want to do. If you want to take money offshore, you know, there are very different apps than if you want to have money here in South Africa. But there are lots of different easy ways to manage your money. The thing I would say is that you want to be partnering with, you've got to separate the IT platform, which is the way you invest money, and the funds that you invest in. So for example, places like Allen Gray and 91, they have great apps. You can invest with them. They also, that's an IT platform, but they also have their own funds. You don't never have to buy the same thing. They're like supermarket shelves. You can get that IT supermarket shelf anywhere. You know, there are very many different apps, easy equities, etc. But they all do different things, and they're all good at different things. So it depends what your needs are.
Yeah, I'm making a note because I think we should maybe do a blog on apps for young money, just summarizing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there we go. So there's our next blog sorted. Thank you very much for the question, Okakanyo. So there was another question about TFSAs, tax-free saving, versus something like an RA or saving for retirement. As young South Africans, are TFSAs something we should be exploring?
So I personally believe that TFSA is the first place you invest in, if it suits you personally, and here's the reason, or here are the rules. The first rule about a tax-free investment account is that this is a retirement tool. It is not a place to save for your holiday. And the reason why is that you are limited to 500,000 Rand in a lifetime that you can put in. So if you save 100,000 Rand for that overseas trip and you pull it out and then you go and spend it overseas, you can't put that 100,000 Rand back. You can only put in 500,000 Rand. So if you're going to use it as a retirement tool, it's fantastic. The second thing about it is that it has a very bad name in South Africa called a tax-free savings account. It actually needs to be used as an investment account, because the tax benefits are best when you know, to save and to grow. And I've done a thing which is basically, if you maximize it, which will, from the time your child is born to, it'll take you 15.5 years to maximize it, and you will effectively provide them an entire retirement for when they are 60. So if you go from the age of 0 to the age of 60, you can provide your children with an entire retirement just by putting the maximum, which is 36,000 Rand a year. So they're phenomenal tools. But one, it is a retirement tool. You can't come in and out. And secondly, you need to just invest and leave. So it is always the first place that I tell people to invest in, depending on who you are. If you're a person who's going to put your hands in the jar, then I will put it into a retirement annuity. If you've got a lot of money in retirement annuities, then, and you've maxed your tax-free, then I will put it in an investment. So it really does depend on who you are. But there are great vehicles and everybody should be using it. Nobody should have nothing going into your tax-free. It should be one of the first places that you look to.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I had to have a financial advisor tell me that. So it shows you the value of that. But that's been a great tool for me as well. So yeah, thanks for the question. Someone, Mazik, has asked, is it a good idea to save your money on PayPal as a South African?
No. So no. PayPal is a processing technology. So it's a bit like, you know, those zhup machines, the credit card machines. That PayPal works as that. You can have opportunities to kind of save and all that, but general PayPal's transaction fees are huge. So you want to minimize the costs. It is far better, and it's an offshore-based platform. Far better. We've got amazing investment platforms here. Invest and save your money on the great investment platforms that we have in South Africa.
Awesome. Short and sweet. Maybe a last one before we go, because we are running out of time, I think, and one that is sometimes controversial, so I'm interested to hear your take on it. But crypto, what do we do?
So here's the thing. I love these kind of questions, because there is, again, remember I said that anybody can be good with the right rules and structures, great and hum. So when people say to me, should I invest in art? My answer is going to be, what do you know about art? If they say I'm a world expert in it, then I'm like, hey, sure. When people say to me, should I invest in property in Cape Town, and they're living in Joburg, I say, sure, but what do you know about property in Cape Town? Have you ever lived there? Do you manage it, etc.? When people say to me, should I invest in? The answer is always, how much do you know about it? Is this something that you live and breathe, etc.? So I personally never buy a single share. I will not buy a single share in a company. Doesn't matter what it is, NASPAS, whatever. Why? Because I do not spend 24 hours a day thinking and breathing the balance sheets and income statements of companies. I choose funds. And there are lots of things on my podcast as to why, etc. Because I don't have the time to analyze every company in the world stock market and choose which one is going to beat the rest. So if you know an extreme amount about crypto, and this is your place of passion and purpose and value, go for it. If you don't But as a guide and a rule, I will always say that 90% of your money should be in safe, solid, good, proven long-term investments. And the last 10%, if you would like, should be divided into two things. 5% for long-term themes. Many people believe, for example, we need rare earth metals. It's a long-term theme. The population is going to age, so aging is a long-term theme. All these other things that are long-term themes. And 5% could go into what we call speculative investments. So the CFA Institute, which is the rocket scientists of investments, they did a whole paper on investments and effectively said up to a maximum of 3.5% to 4%, crypto can be additive to your investment profile. More than that, its volatility is such that it is often more not. But if you're a person who knows a lot about it and absolutely live and breathe it and research it, I would say you can take the 5% pot and pop it in there. Would I put my entire amount of money in it? No, but I also wouldn't let you put your entire amount of money in one single share, nor would I let you put all of your money into anything else. To me, the 5% barrier sits for anything such as your company's shares, all of this kind of stuff. Now, granted, at various different stages of our lives, we might end up breaching some of that. But when you opt into crypto, make sure that you limit it to 5% of your portfolio. That would be my personal view.
This is another one of those, my friend at the bra said I could get rich quick if I...
Friend at the bra, you know what? When your friend at the bra is paying for your retirement when you're 90 years old and have run out of money, I'm so happy for you to listen to him. Whilst you've got to pay for your own retirement, you've got to own your decisions in this game.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's been a real pleasure to listen to you and a real privilege to have you as our guest speaker for the launch of Young Money. Thank you so much for your support and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for the work you're doing. We need so much more of this in our country. There will never be enough financial information and helping of our young people to become more financially enabled.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so just to repeat for everyone, this will be a recording that's posted on our YouTube channel. You do also have access to our website, which again is www.young-money.co.za. And we're hoping to do a few more of these. So if you enjoyed it, please pop a supportive comment in the chat, and we'll hopefully have some exciting guest speakers again soon. But for now, thank you so much for supporting us. We can't wait to grow on this journey along with you. Thank you so much, and cheers.